Hey everybody, Cory from Aquariumcoop. Today I want to talk about a subject that gets talked about, but no one shows one way or another. And today that's going to be potted plants in pots, basically, or planting them that way. And so I've broke down the 800-gallon aquarium, and these were planted with the pots. And so what I want to show you is typically things that are root feeders. Crypts, swords, I'm trying to think of other things like lilies, that kind of stuff, Vallisneria, all that kind of stuff does really well. Now, let me grab one of these bad boys out of here. And you can see that this plant was growing very, very well. Now, the internet might tell you, not saying they would, but they might tell you, you have to take stuff out of the pot and plant it. And for stem plants, I totally agree and say, yes, that's a true statement. But for things that want to feed from the roots, normally you'll get the roots growing right through the pot, which is fine. So all these little tap roots they put out can feed in the substrate. And in the rock wool, most plants come with these little like yellow balls in there, and they actually have fertilizer. They're mostly ammonia, right? And so by leaving it intact, when you put it in your aquarium, it's got all the fertilizer inside the rock wool, and we don't have to disturb the roots. When you take the basket off, it typically rips some of the roots, and the roots might only be this long, and then you're trying to get it to stay in your aquarium, right? Here are some that I just took out of the pot, meaning when I took it out of the aquarium, I said, I want to make this video for people. And so then I took them out of this pot. You can see the roots are that long. You can see the rock wool is right here. Let me pull that little piece of rock wool off there. That's what rock wool is. It's all the stuff you get when we send like a potted plant. So now you can go and you can plant this just fine. Some might even recommend you cut these back if you're going to replant it again. But I wanted to show you guys my preferred method. My preferred method is to keep them in the pot when you can hide them well, and it's not always easy to hide them well, but when you can hide them well, you can get very lush growing plants without having to have that transition dieback be as brutal. Now, especially when it comes to things like dwarf baby tears, Monte Carlo, things that only have roots that are like this big, trying to get them to root again is very difficult. Keeping them in the pot does really well. In fact, this pot, it was in my aquarium and doing well, and some Vallisneria actually hopped in and rooted itself in this. So you can see here, like even the plants will root in it. They like it. That's why we use rock wool in farms. So you have this medium that's kind of optimized. This plant might have been grown for 6 months before you get it at a farm, and it might only be this tall when you get it, and the roots might only be this big in there, and maybe they're wrapped around a little bit because it was grown hydroponically, right? You get maybe some of this roots going on. You can see how these roots are a lot finer than the ones that are longer. And you don't have to disrupt it. You just plant that in, boom, get it to go. You can always come back and take it out. Now, if you're gonna take this plant out, you need to hit it with lots of root tabs, make sure it's gonna stay down and not get bonked by a fish and lift off, right? This will automatically stay down and where you want it. You can see over in this aquarium, I've got a potted plant kind of laying over its side. This is dwarf Sagittaria, and then it spread through the whole tank, right? You can see here, now this is a bad example because this tank is being torn down, but these Anubias in the pot, they were actually, back when this tank had escape, they were wedged in between the wood and the rocks. And again, I'm gonna also pull this out. You gotta mind the algae. The algae is not a result of the rock wool or this method or anything. But here we go again, lives in the pot. And this is like a weighted thing. You can move anywhere and kind of attach it. And yes, you can take it out and you can use something like a weight like I've got right there. And you can plant it normally. And I think, in fact, here's some other Anubias that aren't in rock wool. And what were they doing, right? So if you take these and you just toss them in your aquarium, they just float. But if you take the pot, which also has fertilizer when you originally get it, and you just drop it in, it'll sink. Also, you can see the roots are starting to come out of the pot for this Anubias. And it sinks right away. You can kind of plant that where you want it to go. Let's see what I've got back here. Is this just weights back here in this one? Yeah, so the other option I had used when we took it out of the rock wool, you put a weight, then the weight, you know, like an Aquariumcoop weight will sink it. So, but it's my preferred method in general to disturb the plants the least amount possible. And I'm gonna put these back in water before I kill them. But I really like to get some stuff started, especially if it's a rare plant or I'm on a limited budget. I want to increase my odds of having success, get in there, little snail buddy, as much as possible. Now you can buy, you know, I'm growing crypts and stuff all around. You can see, like, here's another tank with crypts. They're not in pots. This scape didn't warrant it. This one, I didn't plant them in the pots either. They're, you know, all throughout here. So there's different ways to do it. And I'm not saying there's only one way to do it, but I want to show you guys that you can basically grow plants from the pots and it's okay. Now, stem plants, which I basically don't run any stem plants in this entire fish room. Stem plants, because the stems are so close to each other in the pot, they typically, when they grow out, they shade each other and they die back. So outside of that though, things that aren't stem plants, that are kind of just these, you know, plants from kind of the center and kind of grow out, they typically do fairly well. Same with the Anubias. The Anubias will just keep growing and getting longer. Like it'll grow from its pot. And I've seen examples of Anubias grown from the pot that are 20, 30 years old. I'm just seeing we have brand new fry in here. These are baby bettas that we actually, I gave away the fish that were in here, and so there were baby bettas and stuff in here that will grow out and we'll, you know, bring them to the store again. But yeah, that besides the point really. Mostly just want you guys to know, crypts do really well, swords do really well, Anubias can do well, Java Fern can do well. Yeah, it just, I want to put that, not to bed, because I'm not always right? I don't want to put things to, quote unquote, to bed. I just want to show you that it's working for me. That's all I wanted to show. And you can take that with what you will, and you might go, oh, I'll never do that, great, I don't like the look, that's fine too. But a lot of times people order plants, oh my gosh, I can't plant them today, what should I do? The reason we sell potted plants are because they are set up for your success. If you basically provide them with light, here's light and water, the potted plant will basically keep going. Now you're gonna go, well, what about fertilizer, Corey? What about fertilizer? Well, if we don't disturb the roots, and these root feeding plants have fertilizer from the plant farm in the rock wool, you might get 2 or 3 months without needing to even put fertilizer in there. Now, you may have seen previous videos where I go one step further and I go, hey, grab some root tabs and put them in the rock wool and preload this thing. Now you might be able to go 5 months, right? And not every tank can have substrate. Maybe you've got oxalotls, or maybe you've got goldfish that are digging, or cichlids, or whatever, right? And so different stuff for different tanks and different motivations. Now long term, definitely, I had to, you know, put root tabs in and feed Easy Green. You know, there's definitely a lot of stuff going on in the 800 gallon and these tanks. So it's not a forever solution, but if you're ordering plants and you're going, hey, I gotta go on vacation, I don't have time to plant them, or they came late, or, you know, someone got sick at work and I gotta work, just plop them in your tank, let them go. They're so much more hardy and sturdy like this than they are as a loose bunch plant. A lot of our competitors sell those. I get it, they're a little bit cheaper, but this, it costs us way more to ship this. They're more expensive to buy, but they're started out with, all you have to do is basically have a good light and water, and they will continue to push forward for a while you learn to dial in your fertilizer and learn how to plant them and all of that. It does the same thing in our own warehouse and store. They're sitting there getting better, where clumps of plants typically are getting worse when they don't have any fertilizer, They don't have roots yet. They're just, they cut them, rubber band them, or lead weight them, ship them out. These are actually grown in the pots, like crypts are for months because they take a long time to grow. Same with the nubias. But even stem plants, they get cut, they put in the pot, they get fertilizer, and they start growing from that day on. And you can convert them fairly quickly. And so that's the benefit of a potted plant. Use that to your advantage strategically. So my plan, I'm gonna use some of these strategically when I redo, not this tank, but all these fish are gonna move. All these clown loaches and stuff, they like to dig. And there are 30 of them under that piece of wood. When I move these to the tank way over there, I want it so they don't get dug up right away. So I'm gonna use some of them in the pot. And the good news is they spread. So they will eventually come out of the pot, start spreading around, but I've got a good anchor system. And I'm a guy that can get basically unlimited plants. So, you know, I'm just trying to help you guys get success. Some of you might have joined the hobby yesterday. Some of you might have been for 20 years. And everyone's got different opinions. I'm only showing what has worked in my store, in my fish room, in my hobby. For me, that's why I like potted plants. That's why I recommend on so many of our product listings and stuff, like just plant the pot and then let it grow. It's, you know, you can repot plants from the hardware store and stuff like that, but you can also let them sit in the pot. Have you ever let it sit? Maybe like all of us do, of like, yeah, I'm gonna plant that this season. Pretty soon it's been 2 or 3 seasons, still growing, but I really need to pot that in a bigger pot or plant it where it needs to go. So hopefully that helps dispel, you know, some thoughts out there, or at least not even dispel, provide a different look at it, my look. If you guys agree with it, give it a try. If you don't, hey, let us know too. But for me, it seems to work really well. I get really good root growth and I get stability. And that's what I'm looking for when it comes to plants. Great growth and great stability. So we'll see you around. If you're looking for plants, we sell them on our website and they're potted, so you're already off on the right foot.